Pat Fitzgerald got accused of hazing incidents in his, not only like to his players, but in his administration. ESPN reported, or when this was reported by ESPN, Northwestern came out with a statement and saying that's not true. It was grossly understood from players, administration, whatever. And then Pat Fitzgerald came out with a statement and said that's not true. Well, then this morning, Adam Rittenberg from ESPN comes out and says, basically, and he tweeted this. He goes, "Hey, dog, not only do I have pictures, I got text messages, I have video, I have all of it. You did it. Like, your players are coming forward. You did it." You can go read the story on all the specific details, but my Jesus, man, like, you are a 1-11 football team, and of all places, like, if somebody came out to me today and said this was going on at the University of Alabama, I would not blink an eye. If this was happening at Michigan with Harbaugh, old school ball, I wouldn't blink an eye. Northwestern? And secondly, and to end this point here, like, why? Like, this is 2023, right? Like, we have seen how these hazing incidents go. Why?
Well, so first of all, the funniest part about this is, as you're talking about, this is supposed to be an intellectual university. This is supposed to be an academically prestigious institution. And they're the biggest group of idiots in covering it up. And then also the acts that they were doing are just weird shit that they were doing. And we don't need to go into all that side of things. I just can never wrap my head around, both of us being former players at the Division I level, playing at the FCS level. We know what it's like being in a locker room. And I just can never understand how stuff like this comes up and it's maintained and it's something that sticks around for as long as it did at Northwestern. Who wants to do this? Who thinks that this is team building? How does this help a team win? And on top of that, how do you as a head coach allow this to go on? How do you not recognize that this is going on and immediately put your foot down? Kick those kids off the team.
Well, not only that, Joe, how as an administration do you write it on a whiteboard? Joe, they have their hazing incidents on a whiteboard. I feel like I'm in the Kappa Sig house or what, Delta Phi Delta. Well, I don't know the fraternities. All I know is Kappa Sig. Yeah. How does that even happen, man? Like, I don't understand how you as an administration can have that written on a whiteboard. Secondly, from a player's perspective, how do you allow that to happen? Like, is there not an offensive lineman on that team? Like, who was the kid from Northwestern that just got drafted?
Peter Skoronski.
Peter Skoronski. You mean to tell me that man's just going to allow this to happen?
I will say this. It's tricky that if you're a guy on the team and you're not comfortable with it, that mob mentality can scare the crap out of you from speaking up. And luckily,
Joe,
there were guys that did speak up.
And gone anywhere in the country, everybody would have given him massive amounts of NIL money. You know that. And that's an excuse. We saw the kid that went to Notre Dame. Who's the safety that went to Notre Dame?
Brandon Joseph. He transferred to Notre Dame.
Brandon Joseph literally did it. And he came out, Joe. Brandon Joseph came out and talked about, like, I just didn't like where things were going. And he hit the portal. Like, is this what Joseph was talking about? Like,
it might have been. It really might have been.
It might have been that Pat Fitzgerald was letting kids being hazed.
Him to make those comments too after he left when they had that really good 2020 season, I think, during which is even weirder. But I don't know if we're ever going to discover what players were active in doing this. But I think that inevitably Pat Fitzgerald, in a way, is the sacrificial lamb.
You're going to find out, buddy. If you think Pat Fitzgerald is the first person
at the end of it, yeah, that's a good point.
It's not going to be the end of it.
You don't think that the university is not going to try and do everything that they can to just pin it all on him and then try to not let any other information come out?
They're not going to have a choice. Let me tell you what's about to happen. This is my opinion or assumption about what's going to happen. Adam Rittenberg already told you he's got the emails. He's got, or not the emails.
He's got the receipts.
He's got the receipts. If you think, and not being political, but historically, a left-leaning organization like ESPN is not going to make this the most Penn State-esque Jerry Sandusky type of coverage, you are crazy. Yeah. They are going to run this into the ground. Do you hear me? They're going to talk about this on College Game Day every week. They're going to talk about who's the hot board. And then they're going to come back and say, after they tear down Northwestern, we saw it with Penn State. They're going to try to build them back up. That's exactly how ESPN rolls. And I hate to say that. I think that everybody that's listening to this, everybody that will listen to this, Joe, they know that that's the truth. I don't know what's playing on ESPN. I see it right now in the studio. Joe, the last 4 things I've seen on here has been Pat Fitzgerald. They got Pete Thamel going on there next, apparently, to talk about it. They're going to run this into the ground because that's how they roll, man.
One other aspect of this that I want to bring up, and we're talking about how messed up it is that Pat Fitzgerald allowed this to go on, and then on top of that, encouraged it and seemed to have been in some level facilitating these actions. But the thing that pisses me off the most is the handling of it by Northwestern's administration, athletic department.
No doubt.
The fact that there, as you're talking about, the deniability, then only the 2-week suspension. If an allegation like this comes out at any level, even if it's not true, there has to be an indefinite suspension until he is proven not guilty. And for them to get put in the position of having to take the extreme action of firing him after multiple reporters have come out and said, the student reporters, and then now an ESPN reporter, as you're talking about, stating, I've got all this information, and then being scared into firing him. That is not how this should have been handled at all. And then I question if they knew more. I really do question if they knew more.
Well, and you know what's the most ironic thing in all this?
What?
Like players getting paid, teams tampering, all this kind of stuff. I get because you're trying to win. What does hazing do? You're not winning. Joe, do you want to know
fratty bullshit, dude?
It's
that's what
weird,
it is,
dude. It really
this is why I don't like fraternities. No knock on anyone who's been in a fraternity, but I can't get behind this crap. It's weird. I don't want to be around. Who wants to be around?
Two of my roommates were in fraternities. They wound up being like a president or something. I don't really remember what Austin was, but they didn't haze. Okay, they made them play flag football year 1, that was their hazing. You had to go out and run, whatever. Okay, that's cool. Okay. You know what my welcome to college football moment was, Joe? You want to know what my hazing was?
What?
Is I got at the end of practice, I kept talking about how after I came back from ACL surgery that I was extremely hot. This is I don't feel well. I think I was dehydrated. And 2 of the DBs and a tight end, Luis Salpavaro, I still hate you, but they grabbed a whole thing full, the big thing of water from the Gatorade thing and dumped it on my head. And it was like, you feel better now? And it had ice in it. And that was my welcome to college football. Luis and I were best friends in college. We did everything together. It was fun. It came from him. Okay, cool. We didn't throw hands with anybody. Nobody made me run. Nobody physically abused or degraded anything that I did. You know what? We won. I will tell you this, Brian Kelly, Nick Saban, Kirby Smart. One thing that I think that those kinds of coaches don't play with is that kind of stuff. You more than likely could get away with, and we're seeing it at Georgia, get away with getting arrested, getting traffic tickets, selling weed before you could get away with hazing. And really and truthfully, it has nothing to do but being a bully. If it comes out that whoever this players were doing this, they should be suspended indefinitely too. Just how I feel about it.
Well, the thing that gets complicated now is how do you handle? And I know, again, this is probably massive how they're going to have to approach this, but how do you handle those that are no longer a part of the program? Do they dig that deep?
Suspend the school. You're going to have to suspend the school. I mean, Joe, it's no different than recruiting violations from people. It's no different.
So wait, let me ask you this though, not to cut you off.
Okay.
Do you think that the NCAA needs to get involved?
Oh, if they're not already
shit on them all the time about how they mishandle things. Like you probably agree with me that they need to do something immediately.
Well, here's what I think that they should do. We need to find out all the details. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, if they were making them run until they puked.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, give them some scholarship reductions, but I don't know. I don't know all the information. But if there's one institution that I feel strongly that will not do the right thing here, it's the NCAA. They will they will overpunish and then reduce because those people say it's too harsh for the kids that are there now.
I think to that point, I think that Charlie Baker, the new president, has now been placed in what the hell are you going to do, Charlie, type of a situation. And I would argue that he is probably going to take the extreme because he needs to set a precedent. He needs to set a precedent that if something like this comes out, that it was going on for a long period of time and we maybe discover that the administration was also aware of it, he needs to set a precedent. And if what was done to Penn State, which is a completely different issue, completely different situation, I think it needs to be treated at least close to as seriously for what was being dealt with. And there's only, as you're talking about here, there's only going to be more information that comes out from this. Because this morning, there was also information that was come out that some of the assistant coaches were making racist comments towards players. And that hasn't been as deeply investigated. So that's a little bit more alleged. But with all this culture that's going on at this program, it seems like it's a very toxic situation that needs to be aggressively handled and dealt with by the NCAA, and he's probably going to try and set that precedent.
Let me just add one little, you know how I am, one little caveat. Okay.
Yes.
Due process does have to play out.
Yes.
Okay. Due process will need to, but one thing I did find interesting was that the players on the team wrote a letter to the administration saying that Pat Fitzgerald did not have anything to do with it. So, two thoughts on that. Number one, it does not matter that he did or did not know. It's like the same thing when, Joe, you and I talked a while back about your boy that went to New England. Now he's Bill O'Brien.
Bill O'Brien,
like,
yep.
We had talked about people, Alabama fans, had some of them were in our chat accusing him of not recruiting at a high level at wide receiver. That still falls under Saban. Everything falls under the head coach. Wins and losses, big wins, dramatic wins, bad losses, dramatic losses, recruiting, academics, all of it falls under the head coach. You are getting paid a crap load of money to be a head coach of an institution. But number two, and the biggest thing, I don't believe for a second that he did not know. Coach Joe, a head coach knows damn near everything that goes on inside that program.
Unless you're senile, you know exactly that's happening.
Unless you're Lou Holtz.
All right.
Lou Holtz does not know everything.
Don't drag Lou Holtz into this. Don't drag Lou Holtz into this.
Lou Holtz.
Don't act like Lou Holtz didn't produce 2 quality programs in the SEC. Don't disrespect him like that.
Who was number 1?
Arkansas and South Carolina.
Arkansas sucked
when he was there. They were highly ranked. We're not diving down.
The only reason Lou Holtz is worth a damn is because of guys like Terry Rice and Jerome Bettis.
We're not okay. To the
By
point
the way,
though,
Jerome Bettis was 260-pound running back dog at Notre Dame. How crazy!
It is so fun to watch.
Fun to watch. Anyway,
I don't mean to take us down a rabbit hole.
Okay. Lou Holtz.
I also want to bring this up though, that you're talking about this letter. How stupid can you be to pen this letter and write this statement to the university and whatnot to absolve Pat Fitzgerald of any wrongdoing? you're telling on yourself as being one of the people involved. Because if there's all this evidence, why would you go out of your way to connect yourself to this? That has to be the stupidest part about this whole thing. In the article I was reading, that players went out of their way to connect themselves to it by trying to stick up for their coach.
You know what? One thing we hadn't talked about as we kind of wrap this up with Pat Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
Early coaching candidates.
I was trying to think about that, but like who?
I got one man for the job.
Say something crazy.
Ed Orgeron.
Oh, crap. What?
We need Coach O back in college football.
What? He's not going to fit it at Northwestern.
Pat Fitzgerald didn't fit at Northwestern.
He coached it, or he played at Northwestern. I don't know.
No, he allowed hazing at an academic institution.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Ed Orgeron. Ed Orgeron is a way better head coach than Pat Fitzgerald. Way better. But I feel like Ed Orgeron fits at the places that he's been because he's a big time motivator of guys that, need motivation. I feel like Northwestern's like Stanford where, some guys are just there for school. And I don't know if that works with Ed Orgeron. That's just me.
He played at Northwestern, by the way.
Northwestern State. There's a big difference.
You know what, Ed? You know what is going to happen when they tell Ed that Northwestern head coaching job is open?
He's going to think it's Northwestern.
The one in Natchitoches, the one in Louisiana. Is that the one that opened? Higher O.
I'm trying to think who might else make sense.
Yeah. I'm going to give you a wild one. You ready?
Yeah.
Jim Leonard.
I like Jim Leonard as an option. I'm trying to think of like somebody who's been a coordinator at an academic school.
Mike Greenberg. Like he's a Northwestern alum.
The radio guy.
The radio.
Who's that one dork who went to Northwestern who does the betting stuff? I'm blanking on his name. Darren Ravel. Maybe they should hire Darren Ravel.
By the way, have you seen Darren? First off, I've had one conversation in my life with Darren Ravel. It did not go pleasant. Number two, have you seen Darren Ravel run a 40?
He might be one of the most unathletic people on this planet. Did you see his commentary on it over the weekend? The whole situation?
That's what I was about to get to. He defended bro, think about this from Darren Ravel. He was defending Pat Fitzgerald. Meanwhile, he called Nick Saban the incarnate of Satan for letting his players play during COVID.
One of the biggest, I can't even get the words out.
He's a loser.
Stinks. That is just horrible. Horrible the things that he said.
Let me tell you what the kind of guy Darren Ravel is, because he's kind of chubby. He's the kind of guy that gets his hand in after a hot day, swipes it underneath his belly fat, and sniffs it.
But I was completely stunned by the fact that he defended. But let the thing play out. I get that you went to school there and you support the program, but like let the thing play out before you connect yourself to this. Just like the players, same deal.